Zambia to take advantage of Chinese capacity in terms of entrepreneurship, in terms of industrial development within the country, to be able to use that to strengthen its own industrial capacity and international competitiveness, to leverage its own strength in terms of building an integrated structure of production. So we know very well, I mean, as Zambians, as we walk around, we see that over the past 10, 15 years, there's been a huge influx of Chinese people into Zambia. There has been some skepticism around the intentions and nature of Chinese investment in the country. However, these conversations are not informed by rigorous evidence-based research. And I want to take this opportunity to inform you that I was part of the Zambia-China Friendship Association. We visited a number of Chinese enterprises in the country, and from that visitation, I was able to gain some insight into the nature of Chinese investments and whether or not those provide an opportunity for Zambia to bolster its own development agenda. Now, when people talk about China's presence in Africa in general, they normally focus on the negative sides. The fact that the Chinese are here, they're taking land, taking away jobs, or indeed taking away business opportunities for Africans. But the problem with that sort of narrative is that it ignores the broader narrative of the fact that China itself is the largest recipient of global foreign direct investment. And we know theoretically and practically as economists that you can take advantage of foreign direct investment to strengthen your own productive structure and productive capacity and grow your country towards a developmental path. So China has shown over the past 3 decades or so that you can leverage foreign direct investment to the extent that you can create an integrated structure of production and become internationally competitive. So China today is the largest recipient of global FDI. As we know, most of the products that we use, electronic products and so forth, are imported from China, including clothing. Europe does the exact same thing, and so does America. So there's no escaping the strength of the Chinese economy and its importance in the geoeconomics of the country itself. Now, when we want to engage in conversations around the positioning of China and how that can strengthen your country, what you have to take into account is what are the domestic policies in place to ensure that there's maximization and maximum utilization of Chinese knowledge, skills, capacity, and capital to bolster industrialization. So, from a theoretical sort of point of view, what normally happens is that a country has what we call the national budget. The national budget is essentially the government's budget that stipulates the expenditure and the receipts of the government. The government envisages to spend a particular amount of money. For 2021, the national budget envisages to spend about 119 billion kwacha, which will be raised from domestic resources as well as from international development partners through grants and loans. Now, Zambia currently has very, very high debt levels. I mean, by the end of 2020, it was reported that Zambia had debt amounting to around 12.74 billion. So if we take into account the depreciation of the kwacha, and how that has affected Zambia's GDP, we see that Zambia's GDP actually is below 20 billion US dollars. So in US dollar terms, the Zambian economy has shrunk. We know that from 2020, due to the COVID-19 pandemic, the Zambian economy shrunk by about 3%, giving a GDP of slightly above $19 billion, hence giving a GDP per capita of just slightly over $1,000. So that's about how much a Zambian is making on average. Now, about a third of the 119 billion kwacha will be spent on debt servicing. In 2019, the Zambian government spent around 944 million US dollars to service debt. That amount fell in 2020 to around to just over 600 million US dollars, and the reason for that was due to debt suspension and taking advantage of opportunities offered by the international community on the debt service suspension initiative. So what has happened over this period of time is that the government of the Republic of Zambia has tried to maximize domestic resource mobilization. And in the maximization of domestic resources, this is to strengthen the country's capacity to raise its own revenue to finance its own development. But with high debt levels, it becomes increasingly difficult for the government to spend in economic sectors as well as social sectors. So in that situation, the private sector becomes important. But Zambia has a very small private sector in comparative terms with countries such as South Africa, where we import a substantial amount of goods and services. So in the event that the country has very limited fiscal space, which means money that the government has available to spend in economic sectors and social services in order to accelerate its rate of economic growth, foreign direct investment can be seen as a complement to existing efforts of the government. So fortuitously for Zambia, in 2020, Zambia was the largest recipient in Africa of Chinese investment, totaling around 500 million US dollars. So Zambia is an important partner to China in Africa, and topping the list last year. Now, the question that most people are worried about is, what does then this translate on average into Zambians? What are the kinds of investments that have been undertaken by the Chinese investors, private sector, and so forth? So 70% of investment in Africa is by private Chinese enterprises. Now, the importance of China to Africa cannot be understated. In 2019, 20% of economic growth in Africa was contributed for directly by China. From around 2013, China overtook the United States of America to become the largest bilateral partner to the African continent. So what the field visitation revealed was that Chinese investment in Africa are varied and wide, from small enterprises to large enterprises such as Marco Polo Tiles, Sinoma Cement, including enterprises in construction, as well as manufacture of sacks. So when you buy a packet of cement and it's written Dangote or Sinoma, or indeed any other cement manufacturer, you actually what you don't recognize is that this packaging was manufactured by Wonderful Industries, most likely manufactured by Wonderful Industries, which is a Chinese owned private enterprise with a balance sheet of about 125 million US dollars. So there are a variety of enterprises in Zambia that are owned or run by Chinese investors, some on behalf of the Chinese state, and majority of them being private enterprises. Now, what these private enterprises have done is that they have engaged in a very coordinated form of investment where they buy inputs from one another. So, for example, if you look at Marco Polo Tiles, about 90% of their inputs are homegrown, which means they make use of inputs within the country. This then helps to the company to remain competitive and avoid foreign exchange fluctuations. At the same time, they manufacture their own packaging, which they use to put their tiles in there. If you go to Sinoma Cement, most of the inputs used there are also from within the country. So what Zambians can learn from that event, from this type of activity, is number one, first of all, the Chinese are providing employment, engaging also in skills transfer. At the start of Marco Polo Tiles a few years back, most of the business activities were being undertaken by Chinese, but then they trained Zambians over a period of time, and when you go there now, you find that the entire production line is being run by Zambians. So there's been successful skills transfer that has taken place around that time. Yet when you go to places like Wonderful Industries where they manufacture sacks, you see that the plant is being run by a foreign engineer who But then the reason for this type of thing is that we don't have specific skills within the country. So there is already a deliberate effort by the government to ensure that skills transfer takes place. So the conversation today is around what you think about Chinese investment in Africa, particularly in Zambia, and how this can be leveraged to bolster Zambia's own industrialization. So the country can learn from the coordinated type of investment that is taking place, the integrated structure of production where there's maximization of linkages across different economic activities to limit dependence on imports, and then to become competitive, and then to use that opportunity as a window through which foreign exchange can be earned to strengthen the local currency as well as to address issues around inflation. So you're welcome to join the conversation today. I think the number is appearing on your screen. So if the number appearing on your screen, please call in and let's have a conversation around what your thoughts are in terms of Chinese investments in Africa and what can be done. The number to call is 076-42-50055. You are welcome to join in the conversation. Please do make a call and let's have a conversation around what you might think are the potential opportunity, windows of opportunity for Zambian enterprises. So one of the things I'll point out is that when you carry out some deep analysis around for example, Southeast Asian development, what is known as the Asian miracle that lifted hundreds and hundreds of people out of poverty in a matter of a few decades. Imagine a situation where you're born in a poor country and by the time you marry at 35, your country is considered an advanced economy. Wouldn't that be amazing? Now, what lessons can we learn from that type of an experience? So these countries were able to leverage foreign investment, Singapore, for example, South Korea as well. They're also able to leverage foreign investment to bolster their own investment. I think there's a window of opportunity for Zambia to position itself strategically, to take advantage, number one, of the capacities that are coming with foreign capital. By foreign capital, I mean the foreign investment, foreign plant and equipment. So you don't have to reinvent the wheel. All you have to do is learn what these people already know and ensure that you localize the skills, the production, and ensure that you have an integrated structural production. So the number to call is 076-42-50055. The number is on your screen. Please do give us a call. You are welcome in this very engaging conversation, very, very topical issue. You can see, geopolitics and the geoeconomics of China and the global positioning of China and the fact that China is continuously growing. And we know from the 2007-2008 global financial crisis that China literally single-handedly lifted the global economy out of a deep recession and continues to do so even during the coronavirus pandemic. So how can Zambia leverage Chinese knowledge, Chinese know-how, Chinese capital? The fact that the Chinese have come and they're here, what can Zambians do to ensure that we take advantage? Now, Zambia has a very low tax to GDP ratio. There are some calls there. I missed that. Please, you're welcome to call. Let's have this conversation around what it is that you think could be done. Hello, welcome. Bueno, Bwanje.
Ndine kuyabevere kamayo yositumbe kontumira muno mwakanyama mu Lusaka.
You're welcome. What's your contribution, sir?
Ma Chinese tikamba kuti titiwakana yai but chamene tifunako ni kubwera kubolo chichita bills muno chamene tikamba ni kuti ili nabo mazambians vamene vakwanisa kuyenda kufunzira vamene vachita mazambians nobwero pitiriza kakambankani ya mining tili nabo mazambians nabo mazambians pa university paja vamene vaziva pa mining so tikarangana ava vamene vakwanya vimalodi vimigodi vamene vapanga manzi hivi la Chinese tinchitoya kuti vangabwerere kutoka kuchina kubwero panga ivi kubwero ikate mapaipi amanzi awe tinge nchito zamene pangabwerere tingakangiwe kukumba miporo ija noika mapaipi amanzi so pamene tikamba kuti ma Chinese vabwero tichita abuse nikuti langanani masalari amene vapasa mazambians vamene vasevenza kumakampani yamene vasevenzesa wakumazambians then muchite compare na mzambians winangu wamene ali na kampani muno muzambia then mutenge salary amene akolesa uja mzambians muzake muchite compare na kampani amene inachezewa na government to government so sindiye pamene tingafune evo ife tikamba kuti Zambia inkale last chance ya ino government kumiruling apo making sure kuti muleta government yamene izachinjiza ma conditions yanu na kumaking sure kuti ma minerals yanu muchita benefit ngaba ikopa tiyenekera kuyenda ku China kuyenekera che kubwera ma machinery muno mzambia ikopa ipitiriza ziko mosebenzani.
All right, thank you very much for that interesting contribution. Not quite sure I've managed to pick everything that was said there, but I think very confident what was said. You might have understood. I think there are some concerns around issues of abuse. Let me pick this call. Hello, you're welcome. What's your contribution? Hello? Hello, you're through to the program Unscripted. Yes, hello, I can hear you. What's your contribution, sir? What's your contribution? Apologies for that. I could hardly hear what the gentleman was saying. So, as I've pointed out initially, there are some concerns around the issues of abuse and salaries, and I think these are policy issues. My main concern today is to look at the way in which Chinese investments can be exploited as an opportunity in general for Zambians. There are concerns around the type of employment and work. And as I pointed out when I started, the skepticism around Chinese investment is normally mired in narratives that lack substantive evidence. So, for example, to point out that this is the type of work that they're doing ignores the bigger sort of investment opportunities that come with Chinese investment. Imagine $500 million US injected into the country at a time when the country is undergoing a recession. You would argue that if this money was not injected in the country, then the recession would have been deeper. As we saw in 2019, 20% of Africa's growth resulted primarily from the $110 billion US that was injected into the continent by China. So the number to call is 076-4250-055. You're through to the program. Hello? Hello?
Good evening, Beth.
Good evening. Thank you very much.
Well explained and good program.
Thank you, sir.
I just want you to maybe give examples of countries in Africa where Chinese investment has actually enabled that country to transition, to grow in terms of GDP due to the inflow of Chinese investment. Maybe you can give examples.
All right, sir. No problem. All right, sir.
Of African countries that have benefited, and maybe they have transitioned to maybe to a middle-income country, or maybe to a... Sure.
Thank you, sir. Thank you. Okay, so thank you very much for that contribution. There are some opportunities that have come with Chinese investment. We know, for example, in Ethiopia that have been able to grow their domestic clothing industry taking advantage of Chinese capital. The railways, for example, has grown. And if there are countries that have benefited also over the years substantially to Chinese investment, Zambia itself is an example. Before the coronavirus pandemic, the Zambian economy was growing. Obviously, the rate of growth was contracting over a period of time, but the country was nevertheless growing. So the problem isn't necessarily the fact that there is Chinese investment per se, but the way in which you make use of that investment, the kind of policies that you put in place that can be leveraged, that can be used as a leverage to organize your productive capacities as a country. And I think that's where the conversation should be looking to. China is an important geo-economic partner, not just to Africa, but to Europe, the United States of America. But how are these other geographical regions taking advantage of Chinese capacity to organize their own economies and grow in such a manner? The number to call is 076-425-0055. My name is Dr. Gabriel Pollen from the CDPD and the University of Zambia Department of Economics. I am also a consultant, an economist based here in Lusaka. You are welcome to participate in this conversation as we discuss the opportunities available for Zambia in terms of the kinds of investment that come with China being on the scene. So one of the key things that I was trying to point out when we were looking at Chinese investment was the idea that there's a variegated nature of Chinese investment in the country. Variegated in the sense that there are different types of investments that have come into the country due to Chinese capacity. So you've got investment in cement production, investment in what are known as petrochemicals, and if you look at the linear stages of economic growth, if you've done basic international development and development studies and economics, you will recognize that from the traditional stage, you move towards the industrial stage where you now start to grow basic industries like clothing, like petrochemicals and so forth, before you go into high-tech industries. Now, where is the opportunity for Zambia? So China hasn't come immediately into Zambia to start manufacturing rockets. They're taking advantage of the existing capacities within the country. So the important contribution that was made by the gentleman who made the first call was, do we have capacity in Zambia to undertake some of these works that the Chinese are doing? And the answer is there is some capacity, but only to a limited degree. China has been offering a range of scholarships, a range of apprenticeships to Africans, including Zambians, and we have taken advantage over this period of time. At the University of Zambia, we have the China Center there, and we can see that there are opportunities for Zambians to exploit, to learn, to take advantage of the skill. Industrialization in its very simplest form is just learning how to do something that is already being done. So you're not reinventing the wheel as such. It's not a matter of innovation. It's a matter of doing something that is already being done somewhere. Now, why aren't you doing it in your country? Because doing that particular thing requires capital, requires knowledge, requires an expanse of skills. You need engineers, you need economists, you need scientists, and so forth, for very, very particular skills. So the number to call is 076-425-0055. There are concerns around what can be done in order to address issues of abuse. So there's been reported cases of abuse, salaries, comparison of salaries, and what we need actually is a rigorous research that can be done to show that salaries offered by the Chinese enterprises are significantly less, rather than have conversations that are uninformed by data. You're welcome. Thank you very much for your call. Good evening.
Good evening, thank you.
Yes, sir. Please, what's your contribution?
My contribution is that there is no political will for us not to have experts, because we have got institutions where we are training engineers and what have you. But we see ourselves to bring the Chinese to do the roads, and when they come here, they employ our own people. So why can't we have those, as far as I'm concerned, by people who want to impress the audience and which those people, those leaders are going to talk to. We need political will to convince that we say I will call on Daniel to kick out this failed government. We need serious people. I thank you. Good day.
Thank you very much for that contribution, sir. Please join in the conversation. The number to call is 07642500055. Our conversation is how can Zambians leverage Chinese capital and aid? And one of the key points I picked out from the previous caller is the fact that there were some industries in the country that are now not in existence. So we know very well that this was the neoliberal policies of the 1990s that completely deindustrialized Zambia, and the emergence of foreign investment actually resuscitated the economy around the turn of the millennium in the year 2000, and the Zambian economy grew quite substantially. Now, the conversation is, how do we take advantage of the existing capacities? It's a globalized world. The world that existed 30 years ago is not in existence anymore. We're now moving towards the African continental free trade area. So how do you take advantage of existing Chinese investment? What can we learn from there? I know very well Sinoma Cement, for example, exports to neighboring countries. So, and how can we approach this type of ambition and localize that and ensure that we can create that sort of environment? The fact that $500 million was pumped into the country last year by China and making Zambia a top Chinese investment speaks to the fact that there is an opportunity that the Chinese are able to see in the country today. Now, how do we take advantage of that type of capital, that type of resource and skills to be able to bolster our own capacities and make Zambia an industrial giant in the continent? The number to call is 07642500055. You are welcome this evening. My name is Dr. Gabriel Pollen from CDPD and the University of Zambia Department of Economics. I am also an economist and consultant based here in Lusaka. The conversation today is around leveraging Chinese investment. Please do call. The number to call is 07642500055. Good evening, sir. Good evening. Hello.
Hello, good evening.
Good evening. Thank you very much.
Okay. Yes, a previous caller talked about the... Hello?
Yes, sir. I can hear you. Please go ahead.
Yeah, the previous caller was talking about political will, which is, yes, true, but we do appreciate that apparently government has and it has been implementing, we're talking about youth empowerment now. So all we need to do now is that we must now look at the cadre of people that are already in business, and also build when you talk of production. So that's where we are coming from. We are a producing company, but if we produce at a small scale, then we cannot progress. All we need to do is also to see the cadre of people that are already in business, others are farmers, but what they lack is capital. So we urge government also to look into these people that already have got something, but because of capital, so they can be able to compete. It's the individuals. When we develop as individuals, later on we become groups, then we can tap into Chinese investment and see how we tap into into trade, so that we can also be able to compete and also start exporting instead of relying on importing. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that important contribution. Have a pleasant evening. You are welcome to join in the conversation this evening. The number to call is 07642500055. 5-5. The contribution by the previous caller was around the government taking advantage of the existing capacities, identifying individuals who are already in business and supporting them in terms of provision of capital and insulating them from competition, at least creating capacities within them that can make them competitive. Now, what I'm pointing out by Chinese capital and investment is that Chinese investment has also gone into areas where the Zambians are completely doing nothing in that particular area. So which means that we don't have local entrepreneurs, we don't have local industrialists present to take advantage of that. So China comes with their capital, with the capacities and skills. Now, how can we take advantage of that particular type of investment? At Sinoma Cement, when you drive there, you see lots of trucks packed in. There's an opportunity for Zambian transporters there. What else can Zambians bring to the table to take advantage of Chinese investment, but to also grow their own industrial capacities? That's what the conversation is about this evening. Please do call 076-4250055. My name is Dr. Gabriel Pollen from CDPD and the University of Zambia Department of Economics. You are welcome in this evening's conversation around the opportunities that Zambia has. So before the call, I was trying to point out that $500 million was injected into the Zambian economy last year, making Zambia the top recipient of Chinese capital on the continent as of last year. So how can Zambia now take advantage of this type of investment? FDI, foreign direct investment, is a complement to existing resources within the country itself. But there's a requirement for coordination of investment in a way that promotes an integrated structural production that insulates the country from dependence upon imports. You're welcome to call, and we would like to hear what your conversation is, or if you have any questions based on the issues that I've raised this evening. It's a very, very topical issue. I know very well that social media was ablaze the past few days when there was a comment by a Chinese investor talking about Zambians and saying, well, the problem is Zambians lack ambition. Are those type of sentiments true? If not true, what can Zambians do to learn from that type of an investment? Please do call 076-4250055. Sorry I missed a call just now because I have to keep looking down for me to be able to see that somebody actually is calling. And that's why I keep looking down. Please do call. Let's hear what your thoughts are in terms of also what you think you'd like to clarify based on the issues that I've raised around Chinese investment and the nature of it. If you look at the macro picture, you look at the aggregate statistics, you see that China has increasingly become an important partner for Zambia in terms of investment and also in terms of aid. And China also played a key role to suspend some of the debt servicing, giving the government an opportunity to free up some of those resources to respond more effectively to the coronavirus pandemic. So China is an important trading partner, and all we can see is that with the coming into full implementation and execution of the African Continental Free Trade Area and the Belt and Road Initiative of China, there is optimism that conversations around strengthened relations between China are on the horizon. So how can Zambia position itself to take advantage of this geopolitical and geoeconomic dynamic where China comes into the continent and tries to strengthen that? So our conversation with Mr. Li Jie, the Chinese ambassador to Zambia, were quite optimistic. He pointed out that China is not just interested in helping Zambia by way of aid. Is not just interested in helping Zambia by way of aid, but also interested in ensuring that Zambia walks out of aid. And that is why there are opportunities for the Zambian policy space in general to take advantage of the goodwill from the country. Hello? Sorry, the calls keep dropping, and I think there's a conflict in terms of the calls and so forth. You're welcome to join in the conversation, 076-4250055. The topic of discussion today is leveraging Chinese capital and aid to bolster Zambia's industrialization amid high public debt levels. Hello? Sorry, that call dropped again. You are welcome to call, and I think there's a conflict of cause. The traffic is pretty high. This is an interesting topic, and I think quite a very, very topical issue, especially that social media was ablaze most recently with the remark that Zambians were not ambitious. Is this true? If not true, how can Zambians learn from Chinese capital and goodwill? Good evening. Sorry, that call dropped as well. Please keep trying to call as many times as you can try. I'm here to take your calls. Hello? Hello?
Hello?
Yes, please, sir. What's your contribution?
Yes, once again, I'm back. I'm home, but I need to introduce myself that time.
Okay.
Yes, you see, when we start by, phasing out our sources of, let me say, our own institutions that can help us. For example, right now, in our district, the Department of Building is not there, not functioning. Department of Roads is not there. Department of Water Affairs is not there. And many others. You see, we are supposed to have such, so that we can have people to learn skills. Because we cannot industrialize if we don't have the skills. As you have said that, the last year, 500 million or dollars, billion dollars, quarter, came into the country, but we are still swimming in the pool in the river of poverty. The question is why? Why are we not taking advantage of these resources which are poured into our country, Zambia? And today we can see there is a lot of poverty. We are not able to take advantage of the Chinese investment, because you can only use the investment if you can, if you get money and you are able, you have the skill to do what you can put that, which you can, the skill you can use to apply the money that you have received. If you are not able, it's difficult. If you are given money, for example, to rear chicken or to grow what, to have fish ponds, where you grow fish, but you have no skills, you will not manage. You will not manage. So even ourselves as a country, definitely, we need to have people who have the skills to pass the skills to others, and so that this country has got skilled labor. Because as far as I'm concerned, this country has more than enough resources to feed, clothe, shelter, educate, and employ everybody. Because if we don't do that, even if it is paid, that will not be realized. But if we don't have skills, everything has come from outside. People work on our own. How many contractors are going to work on all these roads which are there? The lady that they talked about Zambia 8,000, which included roads like Kasepa Kaoga, Kasepa Mungwa, Maninga, Munyunga, Grimbe. All these roads have not been worked on because they have been done in Chinese contractors are too few to work on these roads. We as Zambians to have the skills to work on these roads. I thank you.
Thank you very much for that important contribution, sir. Have a pleasant evening. You are welcome to make your contribution. The number to call is 076-425-0055. I'd like to respond to some of the critical issues that were raised by Mr. Kwalombota. Some of the issues that were pointed out was the fact that you need institutions in place to be able to leverage effectively the Chinese capital and investment. And I think this is a very, very key contribution that has been mentioned here. One thing to point out is that skills cannot be learned in a vacuum. You need a particular space and deliberate efforts to be able to transfer those skills. So what Mr. Kwalombota was pointing out was that there's an opportunity here to strengthen existing skills and expand their mandate, for example. the Department of Building, the Department of Roads, Department of Water Affairs, how can these be platforms where Zambians can be trained? At the end of the day, capital in and of itself, money being given to an individual, is not enough to then say that this person will have the capacity to be able to engage in production. Production is the act of combining inputs using the available technology. Now, this requires knowledge and a particular complex mix of skills. So these skills are essential: skills in engineering, skills in the sciences, or STEM as they like to call it, right? Science, technology, engineering, and mathematics. So we need to create institutions that can promote these types of skills that can then be used to grow Zambia's industrial capacity. Please do call. We have an interesting conversation going on. Good evening. Good evening. Hello? Hello? Yes, please. What's your contribution, sir? Sorry, we dropped that call. The number to call is 076-425-0055. My name is Dr. Gabriel Pollen from the Center for Trade Policy and Development. I head the public finance desk there. I'm also a lecturer in the Department of Economics at the University of Zambia. I'm also a consultant. We are discussing leveraging Chinese capital and aid to bolster Zambia's industrialization amid high public debt. High public debt reduces the fiscal space for the country, which means the government is unable to effectively invest in other economic sectors, so private sector becomes important in that particular scenario. But with a low private sector, foreign investment then is crucial as a complementary agent to accelerate economic growth and development. So what role can Chinese capital play to help Zambia attain the kind of industrialization that we've been singing about over the decades? Please do call and join our conversation. The number to call is 076-425-0055. The skepticism around Chinese investment is normally mired in lack of evidence and information. So there's need to carry out extensive studies to show the scale, the scope, the nature, and the particular interactions of Chinese investment in the African context, and the particular skills that Zambians can learn in order to bolster its own industrial capacity. China itself is the largest recipient of foreign direct investment in the world, which means that more countries outside of China itself have invested in the country itself more than any other country on the continent. So when you're talking about Chinese investment in Africa, you have to put that into perspective, because you have to take into account the fact that China itself is taking advantage of foreign investment. Foreign companies from Europe, from United States of America have invested massively in China to take advantage of the skills, capacities, and the knowledge of the Chinese labor. So Zambia can learn also from that geopolitical, geoeconomic dynamic. But what about Zambia itself? Now that China is coming here, and we know from the conversation and also the depreciation of the kwacha that Zambian labor is considered relatively cheaper compared to other regions. So this is an opportunity for Zambia to use its own capacities to grow, not just for basic employment, but to grow its own industrial capacity. Agro-processing, for example, manufacturing of plastic bags, local manufacturing of petrochemicals and so forth, clothing and so forth. So this is an opportunity for Zambia to take advantage of the kind of know-how that comes with Chinese aid. 076-425-0055 is the number to call to join in this interesting conversation. If you'd like to clarify some of the issues I've raised, please do call. My name is Dr. Gabriel Pollen. Good evening.
Hello, good evening, Doc.
Good evening.
How are you?
I'm fine, thank you very much. How are you doing?
I'm good, thanks.
All right. So what's your contribution, sir?
Yeah, sure. I wish to agree with the previous scholars who have spoken regarding on
as well as the mining sector. But it doesn't go into other sectors. So it becomes pretty difficult for an ordinary Zambian to appreciate this investment. So it's very important that this investment is spread into the various sectors. Then secondly, which I want to comment on, is yes, there is good skills which we can get from China. So the best thing would be to integrate the Chinese system into our system. For example, if we get the Engineering Institute of Zambia, as well as the upcoming engineering students from CPU, as well as the University of Zambia, they work together with ZNS. Then we'll have that transfer of skills and knowledge in the construction sector. Unlike where we are trying to work independently. At the end of the day, we get the skills, but those skills are not adequate enough or complete skills, which becomes also, like an academic exercise where, of course, there is this project, it comes, runs for 5 years, people get to learn one or two things, but they don't tend to practice what they learn. So I think those are my contributions.
That's really, really fantastic contribution. Thank you very much for your call. And really, the wake-up call, I guess, for some of us also provides some insight and great perspective. Thank you very much for that interesting call. Thank you. Okay, so we are just winding up. We have 8 minutes before the program ends. If you'd like to just quickly give us a call and give in your contribution, that is most welcome. And I think one of the key points that is pointed out here was related to what Mr. Kolombota pointed out around institutions. A particular institution has been identified by the scholar, which is the Engineering Institute of Zambia. To what extent does the Engineering Institute of Zambia work, for example, with construction firms of China? And is there any deliberate policy in place to ensure that there's that coordination between local engineers and engineers from China to transfer those skills and enable Zambians to grow the industrial capacity? And I think it's in China's best interest, so you'd agree with me, that the bigger the Zambian economy is, then the more business that China gets to do with Zambia. So China obviously is smart enough to recognize that it should participate in Zambia's developmental prospects, because its bigger Zambian economy offers more opportunities for Chinese investments, more opportunities for Chinese trade with Zambia. So at the end of the day, the geo-economic condition and dynamic there is to ensure that the Zambian economy grows substantially, or grows to an extent that it becomes a larger market for Chinese goods and services. So we have another 6 minutes before this program ends. Please do give us a call if you'd like to say something very, very quickly. The conversation is around leveraging Chinese capital and aid to bolster Zambia's industrialization. My name is Dr. Gabriel Pollen from the CDPD. I head the public finance desk there. You're welcome to contact CDPD if you'd like to take this conversation beyond that. And there's a call also for evidence-based research. Evidence-based research that takes into account the stock, the nature, the scale, and the spread of Chinese investment, and how we can tap into that sort of dynamic. And I think if you're going to tap into particular sets of skills that come with the Chinese, or indeed foreign investment in general, you need to have a census of those type of investment that have come into the country, where they're located, what they do, the kinds of skills that are required, and how you can foster that. And then you need to create institutions that will serve as a landscape through which an intercourse can take place between Chinese investment and Zambian labor. So thank you very much for all your calls. As we wind up, I just want to remind us that there is an opportunity for the Zambian economy here, and emerging from a 3% contraction in 2020, the Zambian economy in the first quarter of 2021 grew by 0.7%. So economic growth from a point of recession is a positive outlook for the Zambian economy. I'd like to encourage everyone to keep doing what you're doing, keep working hard for the country, and ensure that we take advantage of opportunities that will come from the resuscitation of economic activity following the recession of 2020. The conversation today was, how do you take advantage of Chinese aid? So the key takeaways, I think, were around skepticism of Chinese investment and intentions in the country, and how Zambians in general have viewed Chinese presence in the country. Issues around abuse, salaries, conditions of service of employment. But then there's also a lack of adequate information sharing that then would show that there are opportunities for Zambians to take advantage of all these things. So creating a policy framework and environment. So how has China, I mean, you could send a team of economists, researchers in general, to see how China's economy is operating to take advantage of global FDI and use that sort of system to make sure that Zambians can grow the productive capacity of the country and become an industrial giant on the continent, taking advantage of the continental free trade area. We know there's goodwill from China, debt suspension under the framework of the G20 debt service suspension initiative, Zambia being the largest recipient of Chinese aid, which shows that China is interested in ensuring that they can support Zambia's economic growth. But it is incumbent upon Zambians themselves to recognize the dynamic of Chinese aid and take advantage of that. Thank you very much for joining me this evening. My name is Dr. Gabriel Pollen from the Center of Trade Policy and Development. Please look out for publications and our conversations. Join, like our Facebook page and see the kind of topics and discussions that we have there. And if you'd like to continue this conversation on a different platform, do give us a call at the Center for Trade Policy and Development. Do send me an email. Do follow me on LinkedIn, and let's have this conversation that is beneficial to the country. Thank you very much for joining me this evening. Have a pleasant evening. God bless.